Having a great conversation. Just want to remind everybody about the First Ladies Health Initiative that's going on in many churches around the city. You can go to firstladieshealth.com and look up to see what churches are there. And there are churches all over the city, south side, west side. We just had Monica Moss, First Lady of Trinity United Church of Christ, on the radio to talk about that. We also want to make sure that we extend our prayers to the family of the Reverend Dr. Jeremiah Wright, who's in the hospital recovering. So we were just beginning our conversation with Yusef to talk about this second generation, and you were just getting started, Yusef, and why don't you just pick that up?
Yes, sir. No, I was commenting on the security force that we have formed because we understand being taught by the different institutions being built, like the Nation of Islam, also like the Kingdom of Yah, and even down there at Crow. I want to give a special shout out to Crow, Mr. Munir Muhammad, and all the co-founders of Crow. But we have to have a form of security to protect the entities that we create. So I felt that it was imperative that this next generation not just protects the physical aspect, but the integrity that we show men, black men in this city that's represented in a positive light, being constructive and productive with their time. So I just want to give a special shout out to the two brothers that's with me today that's a part of that Elohim security team. But going to what you were saying earlier, this second generation and understanding the necessary steps that we must take to take it to the next level and to stand on our parents' shoulders. And the First Lady of Trinity, Miss Moss, she so eloquently said when she was talking about health, taking stock, knowing your number. But it's time for us as a new generation to know our number spiritually, historically, so that we can accurately go forward. A lot of times there's no connection between the two generations because we don't know our number, meaning we don't know our history and we don't know our place and our position in today's time. So when we're looking at the news and we're seeing all these different things, events that's going on around the world, we're taking them for face value because we don't know the history that led up to that particular point. And I'm just using Donald Trump, for instance, just to give you a quick example how we can be confused. But this system of American politics is so greater than what Donald Trump is saying now. He just pretty much embodies the sentiments that this country was built on. Using the wall and the Mexican border, for example, where we're going to deport all the immigrants back to Mexico and that whole thing. But if you understand history, you look in 1929, there was a Repatriation Act that America established between 1929 to 1939, where they had a plan where they actually did deport 3 million Mexicans that were over here in America, 1.3 of them that were natural born citizens. So when you look at these things, he's not really creating nothing new. He's not doing anything new. These are things that already been established because we don't know history. When we don't know our place in history, we think that it's something new. And I'm only using that and citing it as an example because the system has not changed. And I think throughout time, because faces have changed, we're thinking the system has changed. So you're talking about creating an external problem for an internal solution. My fathers and my mothers understood that this will not change because the system is based on the manipulation of another people, the exploitation of another people to benefit America's needs globally. So we decided, and I'm putting myself in that lineage because we have to look at ourselves as our parents and our grandparents and our ancestors. We decided that we had to create an external entity, an external reality and environment so that we could properly apply the laws that are mandated by God Almighty so that we can flourish and be prosperous in our own way. And so we won't have to be subjugated anymore and dependent on somebody else who does not have our best interests at hand, which is evident through the realities that we face every single day. So when you look at the health problem that we face, from the food that we eat, you have to look at the spiritual food that we're digesting by our environments that is just as toxic, that leads to heart attacks and malnutrition, spiritually and mentally, which breaks down the body and the souls of our very being. So I just wanted to start with that.
That's great because whenever we start talking, and any of the lectures that I've given have always talked about food is in a tripartite construct. That is, there's mental food, spiritual food, and physical food. And any of them bad creates a problem. And we need to make certain that we take care. And I just want to, so people, just to pick up on one of the things you said, is that this thing about not history, and we'll get back to knowing our own history soon. But people need to go back and read what the original Mexican borders were.
Yes, sir.
Okay?
Yes, sir.
Because what you got to remember, and what Mexico, much of what we call Texas
Was Mexico.
was Mexico.
Yes, sir.
And much of what we call parts of California, and that was all also part of Mexico. So people need to go back and understand about what these things are. So I just want to make sure that, while you were talking about that from a historical point of view, that people need to go back and look at that. So I'm interested in this notion of security, our spiritual security and our mental security particularly. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Absolutely. And just so you can connect the dots, the reason why I use the Mexican piece as an example, because you got to understand, they use the name Mexican, which is kind of a new term, but they're talking about when they exported and deported all those individual people, they're talking about the natives, the indigenous people that were their land, people of color, people of hue. So know that there's no distinction, and that's one of the things that they tried to give us, is that division between us as a people, so that we always have this divisiveness between each other. So it's you against me, him against us. So there's no collective idea and understanding, so that we could really identify who our true enemy is. So I just want to say that first. But going back to the security force, the reason that when we started doing the classes, we said, okay, we need to continue the institution building. You can never have too many institutions that stand for truth. So we decided that we were going to start off with the platform of disseminating information, given the history, given the psychology, given the spirituality, given geopolitics to a new generation who may not have gotten it because of a number of circumstances and scenarios. So that was one of my positions that I wanted to take. But within that, I wanted to show the people, especially the young men, the position we can take if we unite and have solidarity. Solidarity brings such a form of power that it makes you so formidable against anybody that stands up. Because they know if you have numbers and you're serious about one another and you work in unison, you cannot be destroyed if everybody's on the same page. So I wanted to show other young men and women that it doesn't take massive numbers to make a massive impact. If you got serious men and women, it could be 10 of them. If you got them really serious, they can make significant changes in the world, starting with our own communities. So using SoVeg as a platform and our headquarters, we started the classes. But within starting the classes, I wanted to start a security force to show wherever we move, whether it's me or any other principal speaker, that we would have men that were there, strong, smart, intelligent, disciplined, similar to the FOI, and how we would represent not just an image, but the words that we're speaking into existence, so that now that we can be an example to other men and women, especially young men in the urban areas, that it's another route you can take, that you can still be successful and empowered without falling to the degradations of this reality in our environment.
Well, we're talking with Yusuf Ben Israel, and I really want any of you who have questions about it, please call us here at 591-1690. That's 591-1690. And I want to make certain that I always give a platform, because we always talk about what's going on with youth, and we never really have an opportunity to hear positive things. And what Yusuf is talking about is really reconnecting the power line, because see, that's the power line. When you disconnect one generation from the other, you disconnect the opportunity from the flow of power from one generation to the next, and that's what's been done very successfully later. And that was what we did when I was 19. Yes, is that we were connecting with the folks that I mentioned earlier and met every week to have those things. And of course, then later I went on to join the Nation of Islam myself, because I saw it just as you're seeing it. I never saw black men in as much order as I saw them in the Nation of Islam, not even since, because it wasn't just about going to a meeting on Wednesday night or Friday night or Saturday or Sunday. It was about an entire lifestyle that one was immersed in, and the same sort of thing that I saw in Demona. So go right ahead.
And you said something so key. It's a lifestyle, and I think to change the total problem that we face, we have to have a total and complete change. I think a lot of times we try to nitpick in what aspects we want to change in our life, and then see why we don't have the benefits that are advantageous to us. So it really behooves this next generation to really connect to that older generation, so that we can have the experiences that they went through, so we don't have to make the same mistakes. Why continue to go down this same road over and over again when you can stop it at the door and then take another step into a more beneficial light, in a beneficial way, instead of being in that revolving circle that we always been in?
Mm-hmm.
We have to stop that because it's so essential and so critical for us to connect to our parents because they are the gateway to our future.
And you know, it's amazing that, and I'm just so, it's such a breath of fresh air to hear this, only because I always go back to a segment in the show, in a movie called Lean on Me.
Yes, sir.
With Morgan Freeman, when he's talking to one of the young men on the top of the roof.
Yes, sir.
And he says, the problem with you young people is you think you know everything and you don't know, and I won't say what he said.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
But that's true. That's absolutely true. And the problem is that how then do we begin to communicate to the next generation in a way, because obviously you can't do it just yourself. So how do you begin to do that? How do you begin to talk to people and show them the error of that way?
Well, I think about first and foremost when I look at the scriptures, it takes me to Jeremiah 31st chapter, 33rd verse, where he talks about that I will put it in your inward parts and write it on your hearts for this next generation. He said, your parents broke the covenant that we had, so I will make a new covenant with the next generation. And with I will put the law in their inward parts and write it on their hearts. What does that mean? That means you, generation, young black men and women, right now have the ability to be greater without your means. But somebody has to activate that power within you. So first, I think the first step, as you said, is really understanding that you have the power, you have the knowledge in you, but if you don't have an environment that helps activate that, that's conducive to that reality, you're going to fall victim. So humility is the first step. We have to humble ourselves in understanding that we need our parents going forward so that we can have an environment that's conducive and constructive to a world that we want to create. So we all know we're fed up with this world. We all know that we're at a point right now, the junction, that nothing is working in the reality that we know it should be. And that we're facing the same problems as you look at police brutality, as you look at mass incarceration, as you're looking at economic deprivation, and all of these things, systemic things that have been systematically put in place for our demise. If you look at all these things, these are the same things we've been facing since our inception, since we've been brought here on the slave ships from Africa. The same things, it's just taking a different form. We may be a little more stylish when we do it, but we're still enslaved. We're still in shackles. And a lot of physical shackles with the mass incarceration rate, but a lot, in most cases, mental shackles, spiritual shackles that has kept us bound from reaching our full potential. And you're never going to be able to reach your full potential unless you're in an environment that you control. And we don't control this environment. We don't have no real power and influence in a society that really controls how we are not just respected or treated, but how we respond to other nations. So that has to be the foundation. So I'm saying we're not at that place where we need to be. We've accumulated a lot of things financially, a lot of material things, but substance, we got to get back to substance. Do we have the ability to really feed ourselves? No, we don't. Do we have the real ability to power our homes and create energy sources that's conducive to the environment? No, we don't. Do we have the reality to create a financial system that we control and not nobody else, that we mandate the value of our worth? We don't. These are the things that we have to look at again, because these are the things that are going to put us on a pedestal that we now can control our own reality and we can reach that Godship. And when I say Godship, I'm not talking about nothing spooky, nothing religious. I'm talking about the innate ability that you have. Your very nature is one of God. And that means you have the ability to create life in all forms and facets. So that's what we have to get back to, creating and producing life. And our actions have to be one that is productive. That means it proliferates life, it perpetuates life, and it preserves life. So that's got to be the key.
You know, we had a few callers that called in, and I really apologize for any problem that we have. So if you could call back, we'd be grateful to have you on the air and let you share your comment. So give us a call back. Be happy to take those calls. All right, Pam, you're on there. Go right ahead. Pam? Pam? Go ahead, Pam. Great. All right. Well, thank you very much, Pam, and I'll truly will try to deal with some of that.
Okay.
Yusuf?
Yeah, so you seem like you had a two-part question. So for the first part about going into the streets, and that's what we're doing. That's why we created the security team, so we can have a presence, especially starting with that 75th block area over there between King Drive, well, really between State to about Cottage Grove. That's where we're starting right now until we expand. But we go into the streets and we're letting the brothers know that we're present. Because when you talk about the ancestors, well, our parents meeting us, I think that has to be a part of patience on the parents' end as well. Because these are the same people in the 50s and 60s that when they protest, we're getting dog sicked on them, we're getting watered down by fire hoses and all these other things and turn the other cheek. So if we can do that with an enemy that's literally killing and lynching us, how can we be patient with our children when they were created and brought up in an environment that was meant to destroy them? So it has to be both, like you said. But to go back to the racism, racism is not just a part of America, it is the institution of America. So when you're looking at the politicians to do something, I'm not talking about all of them, don't get me wrong, because there's a lot of great politicians that fight on behalf, Danny Davis and a number of others. But you got to understand, when they take their role as a politician in America, they have to somewhat abide by, they have to abide by the law, which is the law of this land, is racism. So if you're looking for this political system to bring some type of salvation and solutions to our problem, it will never happen. That's why we have to be the ones who empower and bring forth the positive change that needs to be done for us to reach the salvation and solutions that we have to reach to. Because in no time in history have any system been changed by using the same system that was created to oppress them. It had to be an overthrow. Now, however you want to take that, that's up to you. But I'm saying first it has to start with self. If we don't understand our own nature, what systems are we going to implement to replace this one? We're just going to replicate the same system that we just came out of. And that's something we cannot do. So, not to go too in deep into that, because I know we got more callers, but I hope that kind of answered a little bit of your question.
James, you're on there. Go right ahead with your question or comment. All right, thanks for your comment. All right, Karen, you're on the air. Go right ahead. Right. Mm-hmm. Oh yes, Fosamax will cause osteoporosis. It also causes what we call osteopenia, which is actually it's supposed to be for that, to tell you the truth. But go ahead. Well, I'll let him speak for himself. Go right ahead. Thanks for your question.
Thank you very much, ma'am, for your question, and I appreciate it. Do we speak to that? Absolutely. We speak about responsibility and the power and position of a male in the household, because we were taught. I was taught at a young age, and I definitely transcend that and transmit that to the people that I teach. That you bound the strong man and you rob the house. So we got to understand the position of bounding the strong man and taking him out of the. But before I get into that, I think the problem is not just the men having children with a lot of different women, and that's a big problem, but it's the responsibility aspect and being accountable. That's the main problem, because you were taught in the scriptures to be fruitful and multiply. Now, I'm not using that as an excuse for these men to go out there and do that, but so innately it's already built in you. But we have to teach the young men responsibility, because if you teach them responsibility, then they're less, I think, inclined to go do things that they can't be responsible for. Because you know, if you're not in a position spiritually, mentally, financially to take on a number of children, a number of women, then you're not going to do so, because you have responsibility and principle as the anchor of who you are. So that has to be the thing that we have to teach. For a lot of times we look at the symptoms rather than the actual ailment, and we got to go back to what caused those problems, what caused those symptoms. We got to get to the real root of the problem, and the root of the problem is that we're totally disconnected from our nature, which is one who has the ability not just to just be responsible, but to have dominion over this place. That means we are a husband, not in the sense of just a marital status, but that we are protectors and we are the overseers, the vicegerents of all of creation. And so till we get back to that position again, we're always going to have these shortcomings. We're always going to do these malicious or malcontent things, because there's no structure, there's no actual avenues for us to really funnel in who we really are. And so then we fall victim of these societal ills.
Peggy, you in there with your question or comment? Go right ahead. Go right ahead. Yes, how are you? This is our clock. Not that one. This one. Peggy, let me just get to. I don't want to cut you off. Don't really want to cut you off, but we only got less than a minute and a half left in the show, and I want to give him a chance to respond. I think he got the drift of what you wanted to say. Yusuf, you want to respond to Peggy?
External problem for external solution for an internal problem. If you don't create an environment that's conducive to the reality that you want to live, you're going to fall victim to the society that's already put in place. Our morphogenetic field is not strong enough to overcome this environment as individuals. But as a collective group and body, if we take ourselves out of that toxic environment and put us one that we can control, and then now we have a better advantage to create that reality that we so desperately need. So you're talking about the reason why all those things are happening is because the environment is, you're bombarded by the environment, the music, the television, the news, everything. So it's no really way of getting around it. So it's not just the music, it's not just what's on the street, it's not just the peer pressure, it's everything. Everything, the food, everything. So the only real way to get to the reality that we so desperately need is to change the environment. So that's why we have to create more centers like we did in Dimona, Israel, throughout the planet, so that we can have safe havens, so we can have places of refuge that we can come to as a people and detox from this toxic reality that we've been victimized by.
Thank you so much, Yusuf. You're going to have to definitely come back.
I have to.
As usual, the time it goes by real fast, faster than you can think about it. But these are real important points. And for those of you who might have questions about why we're talking about this, because this is part of the health of the nation. You cannot have just physical health without physical, mental health, and spiritual health. And that's all the time we've got. I want to thank each and every one of you for listening to us. And remember, also before I go on to the next voice you're going to hear is that of my gospel sister, Miss Pam Morris, who's coming to make a joyful noise over the radio station. Until next week at the same time and station, may God continue to bless each and every one of you with continued health and strength as I leave you now in peace.